I want to talk about what happened with J.D. Vance on CNN over the weekend. As Dana Bash seems determined to ruin her reputation as a journalist at every appearance she makes. Whether she did fine at that debate that they hosted in June, her interview of Harris Walls was a disaster on every level. And then she has these sit downs with J.D. Vance, who does her the courtesy of going on her show, and all she does is reveal her bias. He came on this past weekend. The left is so upset about the cat and dog meme. They don't give a shit about the dead women and children, but they're very pissed off that they can't find a dead cat or dog directly eaten by a Haitian. That's where they've decided to plant their flag. So she has J.D. Vance on the show, and I'm going to show you a little exchange. It was very long. It was 17 minutes, which we're not going to show, but it began with her saying, okay, the mayor of Springfield said J.D. Vance, all these federal politicians that have negatively spun our city, they need to know they're hurting our city. And it was their words that did it. She will later claim that this is him saying that J.D. Vance was responsible for bomb threats. That is not what she said, and that is not what the mayor said. He said politicians that have negatively spun our city need to know they're hurting our city, and it was their words that hurt. Their words. Bash says to J.D. Vance, why are you putting your constituents at risk? It's amazing how it works, okay? So that's how she tees it up to J.D. Vance. And this is what happened next.
Instead of saying things that are wrong and actually causing the hospitals, the schools, the government buildings to be evacuated because of bomb threats, because of the cats and dogs thing, why not actually be constructive in helping to better integrate them?
But I want to start with something you said, which I think is frankly disgusting and is more appropriate for a Democratic propagandist than it is for an American journalist. There is nothing that I have said that has led to threats against these hospitals. These hospitals, the bomb threats and so forth, it's disgusting. You just accused me of inciting violence against the community. I agree you don't want to talk about policy,
No,
Dana,
what I
which is
want to
why
talk
you're talking about
what
other
I want to talk
distractions
about
instead of about the fact
Senator,
that Kamala
it was
Harris,
your
Dana,
distraction.
I noticed that when you had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you gave them multiple choice answers to the questions that you asked, and you allowed them to answer the questions. You accused me of causing a bomb threat. Doesn't that mean you should shut up about the residents of Springfield? Don't you realize you're engaged in basic propaganda to silence the concerns of American citizens?
I was quoting the actual mayor of Springfield, Ohio.
But he did not accuse me of inciting a bomb threat. He just didn't.
And she hung on to that like a dog with a bone, suggesting that he had. Good for J.D. Vance, Emily. I mean, you can't do it much better than he's been doing it, and that interview is further proof. But my God, how she dug in, trying to make him responsible for the bomb threats. By the way, we've checked. We don't know who called in the bomb threats. We have zero idea who's behind that as of this hour. But Dana Bash is super clear that it was done as a result of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump.
Which, by the way, could be incentive for people on the left to call in bomb threats, knowing that it'll be pinned immediately by someone like Dana Bash to J.D. Vance. So we have no idea. She has no idea before she used her time on a Sunday show to question him in that way. And, I would add to this. I went back and looked at mainstream media, so-called mainstream media coverage of Springfield, Ohio, before the cat and dog memes started to take off. The New York Times did do a story in early September about what had happened in Springfield, Ohio, but there was basically no coverage of what was happening to this 50-plus person town, roughly, that had gotten an influx of 20,000 migrants. And this is what makes it actually all very interesting, because it raises the question for Republicans and all of the communications folks that work on the Republican side. And, I talk to many of them all the time. They're going to look at this and say, how are we supposed to get any corporate press attention, any so-called mainstream media press attention to a 20,000 person influx into a 50,000 plus person town, 58,000 person town in Ohio, if they don't want to cover it until they can make hay about cat and dog memes? Because J.D. Vance had been talking about Springfield, Ohio, going back months. There was a horrible tragedy in Springfield, Ohio about a year ago. The media would not pay attention to it. And so the only time they can pay attention to it is when it becomes a negative story, not about Democrats, not about the Biden-Harris administration that had created these conditions since the pandemic for this mass influx of people into this town in Ohio, but they will talk about it when it becomes a negative story for Republicans. I would be the first to say, I don't think Trump and Vance have necessarily handled the story perfectly at all from like a communications perspective. But then if you're them, you look around and you say, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? My constituents have been calling me for years saying they have problems, and I can't get anybody to pay attention to it until something outrageous happens and you can make it a negative story about me. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane. If you go back and look at the lack of coverage leading up to last week, other than that one New York Times story. They
don't care. They want those stories to be buried, and they're counting on the top candidates not to say anything that would unearth them and call too much attention to them because they undermine the whole plan of filling the country. She says to him, here's a couple things. Okay, first, she says the Clark County Sheriff and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources reviewed 11 months of 911 calls. And she says they only identified 2 instances of people alleging Haitians were taking geese out of parks. They found 0 evidence to substantiate those claims. Now, let me explain to you something, Dana Bash. Evidence includes eyewitness testimonials and 911 calls. The fact that they then couldn't find the men who took the geese and find them eating goose does not prove that it didn't happen. What random citizen, months before this became a political issue in the news, would just try to punk 911 by being like, I saw guys steal geese and cut their heads off or whatever they are alleging in these calls? Like, it's absurd. They found 0 evidence to substantiate. I'm sure they did a full-fledged investigation of the geese stealing claims. The absurdity of her assurance that it didn't happen because of that. Then she goes on to say to JD, so instead of saying things that are wrong and actually causing the hospitals and the schools and the government buildings to be evacuated because of bomb threats, so there she directly pins it on him. Instead of saying wrong things, she's the arbiter, and causing bomb threats because of the cats and dogs thing, why not actually be constructive in helping to better integrate these people into the community, right? And you hear JD Vance say, you're disgusting. What you just said is disgusting. There's nothing I've said that has led to threats against these hospitals, these bomb threats and so forth. That's disgusting. And all I could think was, she's so sure it's JD Vance raising attention on this story. What happened? What actually happened last week that got the national attention, that caused Trump to know about this story? It was the town hall, the town council meeting they held in Springfield, Ohio, which made shocking news locally and nationally as the citizens of Springfield came one after the other to the microphone saying, my mother-in-law got run over and killed by one of these. I can't go out on my front lawn because I'm an elderly woman and I'm terrified. I can't go to the grocery store without them opening up jars of spaghetti sauce, sticking their hand inside and eating it and then leaving it behind. All of the complaints of the residents of Springfield. Why couldn't that be what potentially led to some death threat by somebody who'd had it with the nonsense? Why does it have to be the words of Dana Bash's least favorite politicians?
Right. And, Americans all over the country, and for years, not just recently, but have been working hard to integrate new influxes of people from different parts of the world. I mean, this is, there are a lot of Americans who are trying, but at a certain point, again, we're talking about 20,000 people. I mean, the scale of this influx in Springfield is wild. And decent people who are trying, but have testified personally at town hall meetings and in other ways that it's a strain. They've told the New York Times, for example, that it is a strain on housing costs, that it's just been a strain on the school systems. So while the cats and dogs stuff, I would say, has neither been proven nor thoroughly debunked, what we can see very clearly is that this is a community that is struggling because of mass migration facilitated by the policies of the Biden-Harris administration. So the fact that Dana Bash and a lot of the corporate press has now spent a week frothing over how this is J.D. Vance and Donald Trump's fault, and now tying bomb threats to them and all of that stuff. Well, they have not then seriously asked Kamala Harris or Joe Biden over and over and over again, and in very personal terms, to talk to that woman who testified at the town hall meeting about people in her yard that frighten her because they're strangers who are camped out in her yard, about people who are taxpayers who are being priced out of housing because of this. Why aren't they being made to look those people in the face and say, you pay my salary, and I still think it's on you to integrate 20,000 people, not 5,000, not even 10,000, 20,000 people into your town. There's never a human interest in the other direction that is pressing the candidates. I mean, it's not like, Megyn, you said earlier, there are people, and Trump tried to raise this at the debate, there are people who are being, every person, I've talked to people in Mexico, I've gone to the border, onto the Mexican side, and they will say every single person who crosses the river or crosses the border has paid. This is mass human trafficking. People are suffering on the way. You rarely ever, 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 ever hear the media ask Democrats to answer for the human interest, the tragedy.
That's right.
When it comes to that. Nothing.
Oh, instead,
nothing. In fact,
you know what we get?
Way.
We get rich fat cat celebrities trying to weigh in and tell us there's really nothing going on here. Look someplace else. I give you John Legend, just a local Springfield guy. He's just living next to the 90-pound older woman who says, I'm terrified, too scared to go out in my front lawn. He's just like her. Listen to him.
So you might imagine there are some challenges with, integrating a new population, new language, new culture, new dietary preferences, all kinds of reasons why there might be growing pains. I grew up in the Christian tradition. How about we adopt that ethos when we talk about immigrants moving to our communities and don't spread hateful, xenophobic, racist lies about them.
Let me show you where John Legend lives with Chrissy Teigen. See if you tell me whether he can relate to the residents of Springfield. He says it's his hometown.
This tree actually is an olive tree that used to be alive, for real, but it's not alive now. It was formerly alive. And
we embalmed it.
We embalmed it. This is Luna's bedroom, guys, and how cool is this bedroom? She has a slide that she goes both up and down. Yeah. Miles loves cars, if you can't tell. The centerpiece is, of course, the Jeep bunk bed. Okay, now we're in the backyard. We've got a pool. We've got Miles.
Oh, my God.
We've got AstroTurf. We got a water slide over there.
Bye, sorry.
Take care.
We've loved having you. Bye.
Oh, my God. Imagine waking up one day to find out your home no longer belongs to you, that someone somewhere has stolen your property right out from under you. It sounds unthinkable, but it is a sad reality for some American homeowners and a risk for anyone that owns property. House stealing, that's what the FBI calls it. And it's a form of real estate fraud where scammers leverage loopholes in the system to fraudulently transfer your home's title into their name, then take out loans against your property or even sell it behind your back. And by the time you find this out, the scammer's long gone, leaving you, the legitimate homeowner, to clean up the mess. But right now, triple lock protection is available through HomeTitleLock.com, offering 24/7 title monitoring, alerts, and restoration services. You can sign up today at HomeTitleLock.com and use the promo code Megyn for 30 days of protection for free and a comprehensive title scan to make sure that you're not already a victim of this kind of thing. It's promo code Megyn and HomeTitleLock.com or just by using the link below. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.